The Shakers appeared in the 1770s. Founded by Anne Lee, a textile worker from Manchester, England, they fled persecution and settled in New York. Their theology combined celibacy, communal property, and ecstatic worship, complete with shaking, singing, and dancing, which gave them their name. By 1840, they had grown to more than 6,000 members across 18 communities. They built furniture, ran farms, and even invented the circular saw. But their insistence on celibacy guaranteed decline. By the late 20th century, only a handful remained. At the Sabbath Day Lake community in Maine, a faith based on never having children had, predictably, no future. The Mormons began in 1830, when Joseph Smith published the Book of Mormon, claiming it was a translation of golden plates revealed by an angel. Within 5 years, thousands followed him, but hostility grew. Smith established Nauvoo, Illinois, a city of over 12,000, with its own militia and temple. In 1844, he was killed by a mob while jailed in Carthage. Brigham Young led the survivors west in 1846, reaching Utah's Salt Lake Valley in 1847 with about 1,600 followers. Within decades, their numbers exceeded 100,000. Polygamy, outlawed by federal law in 1890, forced change. Yet today, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints counts more than 16 million members worldwide. The modern church emphasizes family life, missionary work, and personal revelation. Over 65,000 missionaries are active around the globe, often young men in white shirts and ties, going door to door. Members are known for abstaining from alcohol, tobacco, and even coffee. Their temples, now numbering over 180 worldwide, are central to their faith, reserved for sacred rites such as eternal marriage. Economically, the church is one of the wealthiest religious institutions in America, with estimates of more than $100 billion in financial reserves. Several prominent figures are Latter-day Saints: former Republican presidential candidate Mitt Romney, Democratic Senator Harry Reid, singer Gladys Knight, and professional athletes like NFL quarterback Steve Young. Their cultural influence reaches far beyond Utah, making Mormonism one of the most powerful religious movements to emerge. From the United States, the Millerites filled tents and newspapers in the 1840s. Led by Baptist preacher William Miller, they predicted Christ's return between March 24, 1843, and March 21, 1844. When nothing happened, believers revised the date to October 27, 1844. The failure became known as the Great Disappointment. Some abandoned faith, but others reinterpreted the prophecy, claiming Christ had entered a heavenly sanctuary instead. This reinterpretation gave birth to the Seventh-day Adventist Church, formally organized in 1863. With health reform, Sabbath observance, and missionary zeal, Adventists now number over 21 million worldwide. The uniqueness of Adventism lies in its teachings. Members worship on Saturday, the seventh day, believing it is the biblical Sabbath. They stress an imminent second coming of Christ, shaping their name Adventist. Health and lifestyle are also central. Many Adventists are vegetarians, avoid alcohol and tobacco, and operate one of the world's largest Protestant medical systems, with more than 200 hospitals and clinics across the globe. Their promotion of diet and exercise has made Adventist communities, like Loma Linda in California, famous for longevity. Residents there often live past 90. Among well-known Adventists are Ben Carson, the neurosurgeon and former U.S. presidential candidate; Little Richard, the rock and roll pioneer who converted later in life; and Prince, the musician, who studied Adventism for a period. Their combination of prophetic faith and health reform makes them one of the most distinctive and globally influential denominations born in America. Christian Science emerged in 1879, founded by Mary Baker Eddy. After recovering from an injury she believed was healed through prayer, Eddy taught that illness was an illusion cured by divine understanding. Her Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures sold millions of copies. By 1910, her church claimed over 1,000 congregations. Christian Science Monitor, a Pulitzer-winning newspaper launched in 1908, spread its influence far beyond religion. Yet refusal of medical treatment led to lawsuits, scandals, and decline. By 2009, membership had shrunk to around 85,000. Still, its emphasis on mind over matter shaped the New Thought and wellness movements. Pentecostalism erupted in Los Angeles in 1906. At the Azusa Street Mission, an African-American preacher, William J. Seymour, led multiracial services marked by speaking in tongues, healing, and ecstatic worship. The revival drew thousands, lasted 3 years, and launched a global movement. By 1920, Pentecostal churches numbered in the hundreds of thousands across the U.S. Its offshoot, the Assemblies of God, organized in 1914, now counts over 3 million U.S. adherents and 70 million worldwide. Pentecostalism reshaped Christianity with its focus on miracles, prophecy, and charismatic worship, and continues to grow rapidly in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Scientology began in 1954 with L. Ron Hubbard, a science fiction writer. His 1950 book, Dianetics, promised to clear trauma and unleash human potential through auditing. Within years, Scientology churches sprang up in California. Hubbard created a secretive hierarchy charging thousands of dollars for courses. By the 1960s, governments in the UK and Australia investigated the church, calling it dangerous. In 1993, the IRS granted tax-exempt status, ending decades of lawsuits. Estimates of membership vary wildly, from tens of thousands to millions, but its wealth, over $3 billion in assets, keeps it in the spotlight. High-profile members like Tom Cruise and John Travolta turned it into one of America's most notorious religious exports. The American Kabbalah movement emerged in the 1960s, reshaped by the Los Angeles-based Kabbalah Centre. Founded by Rabbi Philip Berg in 1965, it transformed Jewish mysticism into a popular spiritual brand. Courses, books, and red string bracelets were marketed to millions, promising protection and enlightenment. By the 1990s, celebrities like Madonna, Demi Moore, and Britney Spears made Kabbalah a cultural phenomenon. At its height, the center claimed over 40 branches worldwide. But lawsuits over fraud and financial scandals weakened it after Berg's death in 2013. Even so, the movement remains a striking example of how ancient mysticism was repackaged as a modern American spiritual product. The Nation of Islam emerged in Detroit in 1930, blending black nationalism with Islamic theology. Under Elijah Muhammad, it grew from a small sect to a nationwide movement by the 1950s. Malcolm X became its fiery spokesman, recruiting thousands, with his calls for discipline, pride, and resistance to white oppression. By 1963, membership reached nearly 100,000. Internal conflict, Malcolm's assassination in 1965, and Elijah Muhammad's death in 1975 led to splits. Yet Louis Farrakhan revived the movement in the 1980s, drawing hundreds of thousands to the 1995 Million Man March in Washington. The Nation remains a powerful, controversial voice in American religious history. The Hare Krishnas arrived in New York in 1966, when A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada founded ISKCON. With shaved heads, saffron robes, and chanting in airports, they became a fixture of the counterculture. By 1977, ISKCON had 108 temples worldwide. Scandals over child abuse and financial fraud rocked the movement in the 1980s, nearly destroying it. Yet today, Hare Krishna restaurants, temples, and festivals survive, with about 500,000 adherents in the U.S. alone. What began as a tiny storefront mission turned into one of the most recognizable Hindu-inspired movements in the West. The Unification Church, better known as the Moonies, arrived in the 1970s. Founded by Sun Myung Moon in South Korea, it spread rapidly in the U.S. with mass weddings and a strict communal lifestyle. At its peak, it claimed 30,000 American adherents and millions worldwide. Moon's business empire included newspapers, factories, and even a gun manufacturer. The church was accused of brainwashing, investigated by Congress, and sued for tax evasion. Today, the movement survives in fragmented form after Moon's death in 2012, but its cultural image, thousands of brides and grooms in matching outfits, remains unforgettable. And finally, the megachurch explosion of the late 20th century. Televangelists like Jerry Falwell, Pat Robertson, and Joel Osteen turned American Protestantism into a billion-dollar enterprise. Osteen's Lakewood Church in Houston seats 16,800, with weekly attendance topping 40,000 and a budget exceeding $90 million. These churches embraced rock music, giant screens, and self-help sermons. Critics call them shallow, but the numbers speak. By 2020, the U.S. hosted more than 1,600 megachurches, each with over 2,000 members. What began with tent revivals and faith healers became a suburban empire of stadium sanctuaries.